Welcome to the video on the Thermoquad Carburettor. Now, where do I begin? Right, well I bought 3 Thermoquads. The last one I bought was the best looking of all 3. It was, it had been sandblasted. So it looked good on the outside, but inside it had about 3 tablespoons of sand in it and some corrosion. So I put that to the side. I'm going to use that later for the XD. So I'm not all that worried about that one. Now another one I bought was on a $30 manifold. It was no big deal and it was really corroded. It had it. Now that thing looked like it had a drug bust inside. There was that much white powder from corrosion that the top was absolutely destroyed. It was also cracked, I think, and I ended up breaking a bit off it. But it did provide a few good parts, and of course one of those was the phenolic midsection. Also, you can't hydroblast these sort of compound plasticky floats. It provided some great brass floats. It also provided the diaphragms at the back, which are in really good condition for some unknown reason, and so we can use those parts in conjunction with the other one that I bought. So there was those 2, which were pretty well destroyed, provided enough parts to make a really nice carburetor. So I've got all the bits that have been hydroblasted, some parts have been plated. I've got an overhaul kit here for it, and so we can work on that. Now the start of this is going to have some footage from the XC restoration series where I've got those others, so I just want to talk about that a little bit. Sorry about that. There's not much worse than watching videos, sort of re-watching stuff that people sort of reload, if you know what I mean. It can be a bit frustrating, but at the end of the day it'll put some perspective on what I'm doing, if that makes any sense. So in this video we have a look at the 2 carburetors we're going to use. So we start off with the junk. We end up with a throttle body, whether it's really good, and in the next video we'll put the rest of it together, put it on this engine, and we'll run it, if that makes any sense at all. So I hope you enjoy. Right, well I've just done an oil and filter change, so that's all good. I can put this thing away. I'll start it periodically and so forth, but now I can start looking at carburetors. Now, this is all stuff I had plated for the Thermoquads. I've got 3 Thermoquads here, all of which are pretty much knackered. So to get them rebuilt properly is about $500. One guy, yeah, between $400 and $600. But I reckon I can do it just as well, as long as the throttle shafts aren't that bad. I think they're only knackered because water got into them, but anyway, we'll take a look at those next. Right, so we've got 2 Carter Thermoquad carburetors, as we said before. We've got this one, which is nice and complete. It doesn't have the anti-run-on solenoid or the throttle bracket there for it, but the rest of it is there and moves nice and freely. The second one we bought, we mentioned in the last video, and it was in diabolical condition, but I did salvage some parts out of it. Lots of bits and pieces in here. Some had to be thrown out, and of course these are the bits and pieces I took off and had plated, except a cup of tea. Hang on a second. So all your sort of these odds and ends, brackets and the little butterflies and metering rod covers and some linkages and all this sort of stuff. All of that was in a big box of electroplating I had done. And of course we've got this one here, which is a lovely looking one. I've just picked this up off eBay for $155. It's got the proper bracket there, it's got the solenoid and all this sort of stuff that the other one doesn't, and it looks to be in impeccable condition. The only thing, there's 2 things I don't like about it actually. One is that it's a 9144S, which is a 4.9 automatic XD Falcon carburetor, and the other thing of course is it's been put through the parts wash, so it all looks good, which is the other one will come up similarly to what this is, but the metering rods are very raspy. And this looks really buggered, but this is the one. It looks dreadful. It doesn't look as good as that, but inside it doesn't look any different. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the other videos I've done, come on out you go. And so what I'm going to do with this one, you can see how knackered and horrible it is. That looks like that inside. Also, it's missing the little cap. Oh, it's fallen off. It's sort of in there. So I want to pull this all apart
get this blasted and rebuild this one. Using that as a map, because I'm going to forget, I know what I'm like, and I'll take everything out and we'll start again. If it's too far gone, which there's a good chance it is, well, I'll bin it and I'll go on to this one, but I don't think that's going to yield a better result than this one. So you can see how messed up and horrible it is. The important thing, I mean, you can re-kit them and clean them up and put an accelerator pump and that sort of thing. The important thing is, though, that they don't leak air in the throttle shafts. Now that actually works in reasonably well. So, I don't know. That's probably actually quite acceptable like that, just with a few bits and pieces. There were some stuck screws and things like that with this, but I want to start doing a video on these. Now, the other thing is, if none of this works, and I'm not expecting great results, I really am thinking of this Phytec fuel injection, which is bolt-on fuel injection with a self-learned capacity. So it has an O2 sensor and maintains 14:1 air fuel. And every review you read about it, it is absolutely spot on. Of course, they've done dyno tests with Holley 750s in comparison. The Phytec stuff comes out trumps every time. Now, at $7.95 American, landed here in Australia, you're looking at around $1,050. And then there's that separate fuel pump sort of arrangement you can get, which is another $3.95. Whatever the case, it's quite a lot of money, but it's going to be more efficient and create less emissions than this stuff any day of the week. So I'm wondering if I can put that on without an EGR plate on an Edelbrock manifold and sort of get away with the roadworthy that way. I don't think I can, because legislation said that 27A, obviously, ADR was EGR, and that's what these cars had to have from June 1976 or July 1976. So look, we'll muck around with this. We'll see what we can do with that. We might get a good result. We might get a terrible one. We'll just suck it and see. But at the moment, we'll pull this apart and get it ready to be cleaned up professionally. So for the sake of reference, this little vent, and that takes air from the charcoal canister. And it's got a tiny little clip there, which we withdraw, and that whole shaft should come out with the spring. So I'm just going to try and take that out with Vaughan's pliers. It's a little clip like that. So half the reason I'm doing this isn't for people watching, it's so I can remember how it goes back. There we go. My gosh, am I going to have trouble remembering all this. Alright, so this one's a bit sort of bent and so there's a little spring there. And that doesn't seem to... how's that held? Gosh, this is a bloody mess. I'll take that nut out there. And that intermediate shaft with a bracket there as well needs to come out. And I can withdraw that, and then of course I can take those two off and that damper will come out. I left the bag and tag. Oops. God, this is long. Oh, right. Okay. So, there's a little spring goes around there. It's hooked. I'll just get all this crap off. And then we've got this little guy here too. I'm going to take that off. That sort of connects to the choke, as the lever sort of goes up there onto the choke. And if I can find the right size socket, which that's not it. And here's my smallest 1/4" drive socket, which by luckiest just fits, that's cool. So I'll take this off, see where that gets us. I should be able to withdraw that shaft. I don't know if I'll show this stuff. So we withdraw you. There we go. That's you done and dusted. Actually, I might just put that back in so I can remember that that's where the little guy went. God, I'm talking about being uncoordinated. They're just horrendously complicated, these things. Give me a quaddie any day. A Rochester Quadrijet. I've always preferred those things. I did put one on a Ford years ago and it was sluggish. I think it might have been for a 253 or something, but it just didn't have the guts in it that it did before with the Carter. But I mean, if I could afford to, I'd go and get this 5-tick injection. It's brilliant looking stuff. And that should just withdraw, which it does. Cool. Alrighty, we're getting there. Right, so one of the things that I'm sort of curious about, it's the spring, now I've got to take out too. One of the things I'm sort of curious about is this accelerator pump cap. Now I'm pretty sure the kit comes with one. If it doesn't, I'm going to buy another one. Ordinarily you would support that and I would just knock it through there to knock that plug out, but of course we can break that little transfer pipe off, and that's a little sort of plastic pipe that goes down from the pump into the nozzles. So I'm wondering if I can just jimmy it out. I just pry it. Yeah, that's alright, love. I'll take it out if you like.
What time's Bunny open?
They'll be open now. Here's our here's the accelerator pump and spring. That should be reusable. And the only thing that worries me, I might have to hone that with a bit of wet and dry in there because it's a little bit rough. But yeah, not looking too pretty. Right, so I've just come back from a hydroblasting place in Ferntree Gully, and with a whole lot of stuff that needs to be plated, but from talking to him I think he might be able to help me with this stuff here. So I'm going to take all of it with me. I've got another throttle plate which is in bits. This one seems to work well, but I'm just going to take all of them to him, all the stuff to him. I've got, I'm going to take that little bit of pipe off there too before I go. Choke housing. Just flaps, loads of bags of stuff that's corroded, a bit yuck. So shafts and so forth. I'm just going to take it all down, and it'll come back looking like new, hopefully. Coming and clean all this up, so we can really see what we've got, because there's a lot of corrosion there, but it might not be as bad as it looks. It looks pretty awful at the moment, but it might be alright. Mixtures out. That one looks like it's got a bend in it. I'm just going to pop these mixtures out. I'm just going to take this one down as a whole without taking butterflies and stuff out. And I'm just going to try my luck and just say, look, what do you think of this? I just gave him a call. And he's like, yeah, I do carbies. Was very casual about it, so that's cool. So I'll just take that whole thing down. And here's an empty throttle body, and I've got all the parts for that. I'll take that down as well. Why the heck not? It's just got a broken stud in there, but at least then I can sort of pick and choose. A couple of bodies. These are Bakelite. You said it's actually quite alright to just stick them in the dishwasher if your wife's not watching, so he speaks my language. Choke housing, all these shafts and so forth. You know what? I'm going to take them too. Springs and... So they've all been professionally cleaned. Now, there are a few things you need to consider with this sort of stuff. Once you have these things cleaned professionally, they're mild steel. Some parts are probably hardened, but they won't have any corrosion resistance. They'll start to rust and all that sort of stuff. So you have to get them zinc plated. Now, I always use a magnet, so I know what's magnetic. Well, I knew that was anyway. But things like these nozzles, discharge nozzles, and butterflies and choke flaps don't need to be looked at. So they can be put aside until I get a kit and I can start reassembling it. Choke housings are the same sort of thing. They're not magnetic, it's part of the casing, but the actuator is. So we'll take that out and we'll get that done too. We'll get them zinc plated. Now these are the floats. They're brass. They can be professionally cleaned at the hydroblasting place that I went to. But of course you can't do these ones. I don't know what they are. They're just a sort of a plastic one, but they almost appear to be porous, but you can't get them hydro blasted. So I didn't bother with that. And I didn't bother with this case either, because it has a part that's broken off the base of it. off the base of it, but you can re-adhere that. I've just got to check when it sits on top how deep these recesses are, so if they do drop off, they have got a gasket around them here, so if it does flood in that area, I can't see it sort of getting into the engine, which is a good thing. So I didn't get that one done. This is 2 carburetors, but the air horn off one of them is getting cleaned at the moment. I forgot to take it down, and the second one was broken, which I had to throw out. So we go around with the magnet. We make sure we don't send anything to be plated, to be zinc plated. You know, that's not steel, if you know what I mean. These sorts of bits here, that's a rubber pad for the little valve that closes off the charcoal canister. Those sorts of things can stay on, and it won't be affected. There's the diaphragm, a pull off, and you can see the diaphragm's fine. So we can just get them plated the way they are. Bucket of goodies here, more shafts, fast idle screws, that sort of stuff we can get plated. Now when we talk about plating, we're talking about the gold CAD plate. You can get silver as well. I always like the gold because Ford and most manufacturers tend to use it. It looks absolutely lovely. Now the place I've used for a long time now, you can take pretty much a bucket of anything that can be in appalling condition and you'll get the stuff back like this at around 65 bucks a bucket. Now the problem is this, they were closed and I wanted to get this stuff done. And so I tried another plater. Now he wouldn't touch the stuff I took down. I took lots of bits and pieces for the Plymouth down and he didn't want to know about it. He said they're too dirty, get them hydroblasted. And I said, is it going to ruin your acid in your tank? He said, no, it'll actually ruin the metal, because what happens with these is they have to remove paint and so forth. It has to sit in an acid bath for quite some time, and that of course is where you get your hydrogen embrittlement from. Now that has been discussed in another video of mine. I went into it. Some people think it's BS, some people think it's a real issue on structural stuff. Now what concerns me is this big closed spring for the main throttle shaft. Now if that's brittle, that's not good. And of course the guy I've used this time, because I've got everything hydroblasted, he leaves it in the tank just long enough to etch it, whips it out, then puts the zinc on. Now all of this has to be well, not this stuff, but the other stuff in the bucket I just sort of showed you before, all has to be done. So I've gone to a different guy this time, just really for the purpose that he was open and the other joint wasn't. But it is something of a concern, particularly things like this. And this is a genuine Ford throttle spring. I think that's one that's been chopped up. Is that that could be an accelerator pedal spring. I think that's an accelerator pedal spring. Things like this isn't going to matter at all. You know, that's just your fast idle off another carburetor, the one that I pulled apart. But you know, we do have to look at these things and consider them. There's some mixture screws. So I'm going to get the other stuff replated at a different place, and then hopefully the kit, I bought a kit in the post, and then hopefully then I can put together a nice, reliable carburetor. Now I don't know how many parts these things have in them. It'll go into the hundreds though, but pulling them apart's a bit of a no-brainer. Now it's putting them together that's going to be such an issue. But it means that I've either got to take a load of photographs, and the problem with photographs is you take them and then you figure out when you look back on them you've got the wrong angle or whatever, or you miss something. I've got another fully assembled carburetor over there which we sort of had a look at before, and I'll use that as a map to put these back together. Now they're pretty easy to pull apart. As I said, it's just a matter of memory, but the one thing that's difficult is the choke housing. Now these choke housings sit on the end. They've got a passageway there and 2 threaded holes, and the choke housing sits like that, and of course you've got to get that off to get your primary shaft out. Now the problem with those is they're these little countersunk Phillips heads, and they're not that hard in terms of metal, and they do round off very, very badly. It's exceptionally hard to get them out if you're not careful. And of course I ended up, and one tip that I think is valuable is using soft jaws to trap it in a vise with your housing on there, of course, and then hit it with a hammer with one of these sorts of bits for a cordless drill. You'll transfer all the shock, if you like, from the hammer down into the screw head. You don't want to use a plastic one because that'll just absorb the shock. Stick it in there, cloud it, and then you'll find they should withdraw quite easily. The same with this area here. But they do round off, and once they're rounded off you've got no hope of getting them out, of course, without destroying the choke housing. So here's our model that we're going to be using as a sort of a map to fit everything in. And I'm going to be using this throttle plate. Now this throttle plate is cleaned up beautifully. It works very well. I haven't got the linkage on for the secondaries, but I want to use this because it's in the best condition of the other ones that I had. Now, if you look at this, I've started to assemble this. I put the spring in and the throttle plate. These little things are very, very tricky to put on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble this one. It's not as good as that, and that is the one for the 5.8 engine by its number. But I don't want to use it because around the venturi are a little bit dirty and a little bit pitted. So I'll put this together, but as a sort of an exercise, and also it'll get rid of some bits, if you know what I mean, that I've got lying around. But I do intend to use that one there. Now the reason I'm not using this also is because these screws are inclined to break, and there's one that's broken in there, so it needs to be re-drilled and tapped, and that's a horrendous exercise. And so I'm always a bit gun shy when I take them out. Now the other one started getting awfully stiff, and I started taking one out, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it right where it is. But of course, when they're put in, they're tightened, but not fully tightened until you can seat the butterfly. Okay, there we go. So we can just start putting that in. I'm not going to tighten that fully yet until I know that everything's kosher. Now another thing with these, you have to be very, very careful when you put them in, is they're cut on an angle. Here's the secondary one that's sort of cut on this angle here. And the same with these ones, are sort of back cut. So it'll open that way, but not the other. And so they're sort of angular cut on the edge of each butterfly. So it's just a matter of putting these in. Now once they're set, you have to sort of peen over the back of them to act as a Loctite, because if these things come out, and I'm not sure how effective a Loctite would be in here, because it might wash off with all the fuel going past. So they sort of manually bash the end of the thread at the end, at the rear side. So in doing that, it'll make sure that it's not going to come out. Now it's important with these things to knock over or maybe center punch, anything, burr the end of these so they can't come loose, because those screws will destroy an engine. And in order to do that, you would support the screw head onto something solid before you hit them, because you don't want to knock the shaft out of whack. Now that's easy to see. Here's an old Plymouth carburetor. I'll just remove that for a moment. This is the old carby off the Plymouth, and it's very easy to see on here. They're actually crisscrossed. They're really, really flared out. Now, what's a concern is I've got a new carburetor for it, and this is a sort of an overseas knockoff, and these ones haven't been, if you look at that. So I'm going to hit those. I'm going to take that throttle body off, and I'm going to flare those. Because as I said, if any of those work loose and get into an engine, we're in strife. Hopefully it works properly. Although, as I said, I'm not using this in the car. This is just more for demonstration purposes. And also as storage of parts. I've already lost a couple of small screws I was looking for before. Which is a real pain because they're so small. But anyway, there you go. That's all looking good. Now, one of the reasons people go to carburetor specialists is to get them rebushed. The shafts rebushed. These are great. And you can see there's no wear there. And so I'm going to chance it with these ones. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll have to take a humble pill, but I reckon I'm right. So, of course, this one goes in just like that. I've got this little spring here, and that goes above the body to always maintain spring pressure on the secondaries. So you have to make sure that spring's wrapped around that roll pin, so it opens like that, with that linkage hanging off the back. I'm just sort of looking at what's going on over there. So that's all good. So these things again are angled cut, so they're going to be opening in there like that, so they're going to drop in sort of like that. I think to keep in mind, I've just had trouble with this. I couldn't get it to line up. These only go one way. They're not just angular cut, but they're also off center, so they can only literally go in one way. So if you put them in and they don't fall straight into place, it's because you've done it wrong. And I should say you've done it incorrectly. So I'm just going to nip those up. Actually, that's cross-threaded. I'm going to take that out again. My problem is I can't see a damn thing. And things get worse when you turn a camera on. You end up making all sorts of mistakes. And my son's here, so I'm talking to him. And I'm not, hello. And so I'm not concentrating on what I'm doing. So at the end of the day, it can only go, each one can only go one way. I forgot to mention on the primary ones, but it's certainly the case on both primary and secondary. So once you've got them in, they're centered, it'll work, you see. So this one's broken, we know it's broken, so you don't need to write comments that you're an idiot because it's broken, because I already know. And this sort of goes under and through, just like that. And we secure it with a nice big screw, and I've got plenty of these. I've pulled 2 carbs apart, so I've got another load of stuff going off to the platers. I just took a whole lot of Plymouth bits and pieces, so I've got more to go. Oops. And we can just secure that. And it flaps around in the breeze, which is all good. And then of course this goes on. And again, I'm looking at my map as I go along. It's minimal effort. I have to lubricate with a bit of CRC behind that, but that just plugs on there, like that somehow. There we go. And these my Netherlands pliers, Nipex. I call them Vaughan because Vaughan Shonikers gave them to me. And I'm just going to put those on. And I should be using my other glasses because I can't see a damn thing, but with any luck, I'll get it on. There we go, there's one. Like that. There we go. All good. Excellent. So now, what happened there? Oh, that weight. That weight there has to be up by the fast idle. By the fast idle being off, and then your secondary's open. There we go. That's cool. Excellent. So let's put a bit of CRC on here, so that's a little bit better. It's a bit freer to turn. There's a whole raft of adjustments that go. Oh, you come back. That go that are applicable to these, and sort of. I need to use the manual, but you know, it's that can be done later. I'm not worried about it. Righto. So if I turn that around, I want to have a look at the other side of the primary throttle shaft. I've got these 2 brackets here, although that one, I think I've got the wrong one. Hang on a sec. Oh no. No, that's good. Alright. So basically this goes over there, flaps around in the breeze, and this little guy goes on top and it's got a square drive. It sort of sits just prior to it. With its, yeah, just like that. And I'm just going to give this a little bit of a spray, and we can put that on. And these have got a sort of a bird thread to prevent them from coming undone. There's no washer on it, just all screws in. This ratchet's giving up, I think. But they won't come out because they're actually an odd sort of thread. So we'll just, whoops, nip that up a bit. That'll be good. So that's cool. And there's also a cam that goes there too, and a little lever. I'll show you that in a moment. We'll just get the mixture screws out. This is more demonstrative than useful really, but they just screw in. And mixtures go down to seat, you seat them. This thing feels odd. That's something odd with this. Oh no, there we go. You seat them and then back them out, I think 1.5 turns. So that's seated, so we'll back it out 1/2. 1.5. That's a good starting point for it. So that's a very rudimentary look at how the throttle body goes together. There's other sort of idle up screws and all sorts of things that go. There's one that goes in there for the kickdown adjustment. This is a manual car, so I won't need anything like that. Obviously the choke housing goes on the side here, and the only thing I haven't really done very well, aside from this, because I'm not using this, it's only for demonstration, is of course I forgot to put that cam in. And that cam, when you operate the throttle, pushes on a lever, which goes in here with a pin. And that lever, of course, pushes up and down on the metering rods, which lets the fuel in. So I've done that badly. I've done it very badly. But at the end of the day, you get the picture how it goes. And so that's not bad for demonstration. We'll get onto the real one now. Now these parts have been hydro blasted. So water, hydro obviously, that contains a glass shot, if you like, or a glass component that takes the debris away. Now, it doesn't work like sandblasting in that it doesn't take material away. It only sort of peens the debris and gets rid of it that way. So it's by far the most gentle, I should say, way of getting muck off. Now that looks like it's been rattle can painted. It hasn't. That's just raw aluminium that's been hydroblasted. So for these sorts of parts, you can get a can of carby cleaner and a toothbrush and this sort of thing, but it won't give you a result like that. These were absolutely destroyed before I started. They look terrible, and of course now they look really, really good, and that's because they've been hydroblasted. Now, all of this stuff, and I've got a whole box of stuff, was about $130 all up, so it wasn't free, but there's a lot of labour in sort of doing it. So it's definitely the way to go with this sort of stuff. But it also makes it such that they won't get dirty. They'll be easy to keep clean. They won't sort of dirty up and stay dirty like a sandblasted part would, because that gives the dirt, obviously, and the debris a key to sit in, whereas this won't. It's sort of smoother. So, I mean, it will get normal wear and tear on it, but they won't soil nearly as quickly as what a sandblasted component would. And, of course, here's the lid for the carburetor, and it looks absolutely brand new, and that's hydroblasting for you. It's nice and smooth. There's no pitting. It was a diabolical mess. It looked to the point where it was something that you would discard before. Now, the only fault I can find with it is a tiny bit of debris left in the accelerator pump housing. I can get to that with 1000 wet and dry and give it a bit of a hone, but otherwise it's perfect. So, I mean, the normal code of practice for this would be to blow out absolutely everything with compressed air, the same as our throttle bodies, before we reassemble. But you can see the difference, and it is amazing. And it's a really non-invasive type of cleaning. It doesn't cause any drama whatsoever, and no damage to these sorts of surfaces, which is really, really important when you're dealing with classic cars and parts that are getting harder to get. And of course, here's our kit, our overhaul kit. So it comes, as you said. Let's just take a few things out and have a look. Of course, the exploded view diagram here, which shows everything about where everything goes, the positioning. Interestingly, the brass floats, they give you a detail on the float height. Nitrofill floats, they're the ones we couldn't get hydroblasted, which I didn't realise was suitable for LPG, but brass won't. Brass weren't. I didn't know that. So of course we've got air cleaner gasket up here, the base gasket, which is brilliant. It's nice and thick. Upper housing, lower housing. There's our little choke gasket here, which we need for the choke housing. We've got the fuel transfer pipe, which is for accelerator pump, and of course the base, nozzle gaskets, all sorts of stuff in there, even that little one there for the charcoal canister, needles and seats with gaskets, and accelerator plunger. So everything's here that we need. It's really, really good. So in the next video we'll put it all together, and I think we'll be finished then. Hopefully it'll work well and we'll live happily ever after. Whatever the case, take care of yourselves, drive safely, and enjoy your classic. Ta-da!